every opportunity Steve Kerr gets to throw some shade or take a shot at the Houston Rockets, he's going to do it. But let's examine why he would do that. First of all, let's take a look at who Steve Kerr was as a basketball player, right? He was a role player, but not just a role player. Look at how his game was developed and how it was nurtured, the systems he played in. Lute Olson at Arizona, Phil Jackson in the triangle, and then, of course, the Spurs system. So not only was he a role player just because of his physical tools and stature, but he also happened to play in some of the greatest systems that the league has ever seen. So from that standpoint, you'd understand why he doesn't appreciate pick and roll isolation basketball, right? It's not just aesthetically unpleasing to most basketball fans, but Kerr, I think to his core, it frustrates him because of the fact of the type of player he was in the systems that he was brought up in, right? Now, push that aside for a second. That's one reason, right? The other reason is the pettiness of the Houston Rockets in Daryl Morey. Now, you can call the last 4 or 5 seasons, you could call the Rockets a rivalry, maybe, right? I guess it was the closest thing to a rivalry. Maybe the Cavs with LeBron, right? But I think Chris Paul even said it himself. He's like, look, man, in order to be a rivalry, you got to win sometimes. Like if they keep punching us out, then is it really a rivalry when they always win? And I agree. I concur with Chris Paul on that statement. But Houston, Daryl Morey, as far as they're concerned, it's a rivalry, right? And you know, they almost have gone as far to say, like, they're the better team, they just don't happen to win, right? It doesn't add up. Their pettiness, going to the league, complaining about fouls. How much did they spend? What was it? Someone remind me. I know y'all remember. What did they spent like over $100,000 from a private firm to like draw up a video on how they were robbed out of some of those finals matchups, or excuse me, those playoff matchups, right? So there's been a level of pettiness and the fact that they basically kind of don't give the Warriors credit for being the winners, right? They kind of act as if, well, we should have won, therefore we are better. But really, it's proven time and time again that Morey ball, ISO ball, and that system hasn't won. And so I think Kerr likes to take every opportunity he can to kind of point that out, right? Because, again, of all that I had just stated. All right, moving on from that. I wanted to talk a little bit about Kevon Looney, the forgotten man. And I think very positive signs have come out of this Warriors minicamp, the double, that Kevon Looney is finally healthy. Now, I know we've heard that said a lot, right? You're probably like, I'm not holding my breath on that one. Apparently this time it was an abdominal surgery that he had this offseason. And he had talked about how last year he was frankly just afraid to move. And he didn't want to extend himself or jump really because, again, he didn't know when that abdominal pain was going to strike him. And that sounds about right. You know, like that's what it looked like. Me being, you know, the pessimist that I am last season, I was like, yo, did Looney just get paid and then just like stop playing? Like, are you kidding me? Like it was very noticeable, the regression of Kevon last year. So I thought it had a little bit to do with him getting paid, albeit it was kind of a discount deal, but it relatively getting paid, right? And then I think also I was chalking it up to the fact that once it was very clear that they weren't going to be competitive last season, very early on, he was probably like, well, what's the point, man? And we saw him kind of dogging it out there. But now, in hindsight, that's exactly what it looked like. It looked like he was afraid to move out there. And so that's positive, man. That's positive that sounds like that went well and he's feeling good. And, you know, I'm not really concerned with Looney losing a step, right? He's still young. And the reality of the situation is Looney, he came into the league without a step. He came into the league with an old man's game. He has never been reliant on his athleticism. Now, it was the hip surgery at UCLA initially that allowed him to slide to us. Bob Myers, that UCLA connection. He was pretty athletic before that. If you go back and look at some of his high school footage and stuff like that, but upon entering the league, he was never an athlete, right? And so I'm not so concerned about him losing a step And I say all that to say that if he is healthy and he can give us 65, 70 games a year, I say that trying to be realistic, right? He's not an Ironman. He's not going to give us 82. But if he can be relatively healthy, I think he can be the same player that we saw him at his peak. Because again, it was never about losing a step. So I think that that's a positive. And I think he is, almost an ideal backup 5'4", big man off your bench. And needless to say, obviously, the way things are going now, that's become of an utmost importance. He's become even more valuable in this time off, seeing it as the big man resurgence in size around the league, the Lakers, Denver, even Bam Adebayo in Miami, right? And so that becomes increasingly valuable. And I think that, hey, if they take Wiseman, isn't Looney like the perfect guy to kind of ease Wiseman into the starting lineup? You could kind of platoon them at the 5 position. And then Kevon is good starting, not starting, right? Splitting minutes. They don't really want to play him more than 20, 25 minutes anyway. He's always low-key been on a minute cap. And so it'd be a perfect guy for Wiseman to get eased into that starting role next season. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just saying. So y'all saw the thumbnail. Who is the hardest worker? Could you make it out? Could you see? I tried to make sure you couldn't tell who it was. Well, it's Jordan Poole, apparently. It's Jordan Poole. And those of you that were trying to guess from the thumbnail, maybe you got it from the blur, right? Or the complexion, possibly. But if you looked at his body and his frame, I think you might have been fooled. I think most of you probably said to yourself, that's not Jordan Poole's body. Whose body is that, right? Well, that's Jordan Poole. And Jordan Poole is a gym rat. Apparently, he's been the first guy in, the last guy out, and he's been at the facility more than any other Warrior during this layoff. And man, does that bode well? Does that bode well, right? Let's do a little bit of a timeline on Jordan Poole here. So we take him out of Michigan, and Summer League, it's like, oh, this boy kind of has the juice. Like, it looks like it was a steal. And even in preseason, remember that Laker game? Like, he did well. He did well, and it looked like, okay, this kid's going to be ready to contribute. Good job, Bob Myers, right? And then somewhere between preseason and the beginning of the regular season, which I know that doesn't really make sense, right? Like, it's right there. But it seemed as if he gained like 15 pounds. I don't know if you want to call it like the freshman 15 or whatever it was, but he was noticeably heavier, and not in a good way. He was pudgy, to be honest with you. And, I think that really was one of the main reasons he had such a bad start. Because you got a guy who's so creative and dynamic in the way he handles and gets to his shot. When you put 15 pounds on a frame like that, it's more noticeable, right? Like we're just talking about Kevon. You could put 15 on Kevon, doesn't really affect his game, right? With Poole and the way he likes to play, that affects his game. And so I thought that had an impact on, one of the more atrocious starts we've seen for a rookie in quite some time. Now you fast forward to the D'Angelo Russell trade. And that is the point where you can circle and say, all right, he started to look better then. Well, what happened? What happened was he had more opportunity with the ball in his hand. I know he played off ball. He was a 2-guard at Michigan. But if you paid attention to his skill set and the way he plays, it really benefited him because he all of a sudden kind of became the backup point guard, right? We had all these injuries. You had the Mulder kid coming in, Damian Lee playing heavy minutes. There was no lead guard. Kai Bowman was up and down from the G League. So all of a sudden, the ball was in Poole's hands a lot more. And what you saw was him find a rhythm. His ability to handle the ball that found a rhythm for him. And then you started to see that it magnified his strengths as a basketball player, and that is his handle, his creativity, and his playmaking. Now, I'm not saying he's like a point guard, a pure point guard, but these days, who is, right? But what was very clear was that he's a much more natural playmaker than any of the other young guards on the roster. Kai Bowman, Damian Lee, Mark Mulder. I don't even think I've seen Mulder pass. That's not what he's in the league to do, right? And so he started to thrive, and he started to show signs. And now you see this huge layoff that he's had. Who is going to benefit most from this extended time off around the NBA? It's the gym rats. It's the hoopers, the guys that can't stay out of the gym. And so apparently he's one of those guys. And he hasn't just been working on his game, but his body, as you can see in the thumbnail, he's leaner and I'm guessing he's stronger, right? And so I'm excited, man. Like, I think that he's worked himself into an opportunity to maybe be that third guard behind Steph and Clay. He's got the size, right? He's shown the playmaking ability. Now, I know what y'all are going to say. Alk, man, the shot, bro. And you know what? I don't really have answers for it. I really don't. It's one of those shots where I tried to break it down frame by frame. There's not something mechanically that like jumps out and screams to me like, oh, you got to fix that, right? What I would say is it needs to be more uniform, meaning it needs to be the same every time. It's got to be more consistent. And I know that's kind of lame to say, but that's all I got for you. To me, it looked like his timing on his release was changing. And again, maybe that was some of the weight. And then ultimately shot selection, right? He was taking very difficult shots, but sometimes he was missing, butt naked open weak side threes too. So, I don't know how consistent of a shooter he will be throughout his career. He might be a streaky shooter, but the good news is he showed that he's more than just a shooter. Again, I already talked about the playmaking, but what I liked most of all about his rookie season was he showed some dog. Jordan Poole showed that he's a dog. You have one of the worst starts to a rookie season, and I don't know, I'm sure you could point statistically to other guys, but he was shooting terribly. The media was getting at him. Shit, I probably got at him too a little bit, right? But I wasn't willing to give up on him yet, but he showed mental resiliency by his confidence didn't waver too bad. Like, yeah, he got a little hesitant. He got a little gun shy, but not enough to where Kerr had to pull him out, right? So he maintained that mental toughness. And then he showed some physical toughness. He got chipped up and he showed, again, just dog overall, mental and physical toughness to go along with being a playmaker. Oh yeah, and he's a gym rat and he's constantly in there working his game. Expect Jordan Poole to take a big step year 2 for the Dubs. All right, I've got one more double topic here. A couple of people have asked me about Jonathan Simmons, the former San Antonio Spur / Magic. I think Jonathan Simmons is one of those players. This happens to all fan bases. No one's immune to this, right? But he played so well against us. I think it was in the 18 playoff series, right? In those playoffs, that we Warrior fans as a fan base, we maybe have an inflated sense of how good of a player he is because we remember how good he played against us, right? And so Jonathan Simmons, he had that great playoff. He guarded Harden, and then he had a real opportunity when Kawhi went down against us, and he showed out, right? He's physical. He was athletic. He's kind of a utility wing, right? He doesn't do anything great, but he did everything pretty good and he showed some toughness. And so it looked like he was in line to sign a contract long-term with the Spurs. And the Spurs were like, thanks, but no thanks. And so he went and got a deal from Orlando and then somehow kind of just fizzled out of the league, right? And what I think we can gather from what Steve Kerr has said, because again, people are kind of hinting at the Warriors picking him up and adding him to the roster. And Kerr said he definitely thinks he's got NBA years left in him and whatnot. I think what we can gather from that is that, look, he hasn't lost a step. It's not physical. He's not like washed. And so then that leads me back to his character and perhaps maturity. There was something that the Spurs saw in him that they didn't like. And again, they passed on him after they're the team that gave him the chance, right? He kind of had a wild up and down ride to get to where he's at, right? The story goes, he paid his own way onto an Austin Spurs G League tryout. Not only did he make the G League, he ends up starring in the playoffs for them, right? And then they pass on him. He goes and gets the relative bag from Orlando. I've made it. I'm a success story. I've made it to the NBA. And then he fizzles out of the league. So it's like he's made it. He's had it taken away from him. And now he's trying to fight to get back. So if that's not character building, I don't know what is. I think the hope would be that he has matured now at 31 years old. Apparently, he still has it physically. And he just went and signed with a team in China to actually play in some real live games here before this next season starts. So I do think it's a guy you keep an eye on. I think it's a guy you keep an eye on and see if he's matured, and maybe we can take advantage of it, because what he brings to the table is you like his physicality, right? And you like his motor, right? He has some toughness. And we've got all these young guys, and we've got some skilled guys. I think Kerr alluded to it a little bit. We're lacking some athleticism and some size for sure, but I think we need some toughness. We need some toughness. So keep an eye on him. I think, the question will be, does he shoot it enough? Does he shoot it well enough to space the floor? But why he's really in the league is his toughness, his ability to defend multiple positions, right? And then if he can hit the open corner three, then yeah, he might be a viable option to fill out the end of that bench. I'm going to leave you with a parting shot at Draymond Green, because that's what I do, right? And some of this is tongue in cheek, right? But look here, I'm sure most of you saw his annual "I'm knocking threes down," his off-season video of "I'm pumping up threes, I'm getting in the work," right? I'm getting in the work. And good job on the timing from him and his team to get that video out, right? Because, Dub Nation and us fans were starting to grumble like, this dude sure is on TNT a lot, but he don't want to show up in the double and work with the young guys. And it's like, all right, well, he's earned that pass, the Defensive Player of the Year, the 3-time champion. But look, Draymond shouldn't get the same pass that Steph gets. And I'll tell you why. It's pretty simple. One, we're talking two different levels of stardom and player, right? That's clear. I think Draymond knows that as well. But two, look, I had brought up the phrase gym rat earlier with Jordan Poole. Steph Curry's a gym rat. He's a hooper. So we know whether Steph's in the double, on TV, on the golf course, whatever he is doing, we know behind the scenes he's getting in the work because he can't help himself. That's what a hooper is. That's what a gym rat is. They don't need motivation to get in the gym and do work. They need to go do it. It's a part of who they are. And so that's what's different and why Steph gets a pass and Draymond probably shouldn't. So look, what's the saying? Fool me once, right? That's how I feel about the Draymond off-season three balls, right? Because it's like we've seen this again annually. The proof is in the pudding. You're going to have to show me, bro. You're going to have to show me. Do I think he's capable of it? I do, because I think his will and his competitiveness is that strong. If he gets motivated enough to prove us wrong and work on it enough, then yeah, I think he can get to that 33, 35% sweet spot that we need him to be at. But again, you got to show me. You got to show me. You can't just cut up some little Instagram clip and I'm okay, it's coming now, right? No, it don't work like that. But yeah, so this bubble's about to wrap up here. I'll continue with the content. Warrior fans, those of you that are interested, I'm going to be doing Niner breakdowns on my Patreon like I did last season here once the finals are over to kind of get us through into this next season. Of course, you'll still get the draft coverage and all the other stuff, but that's just an added bonus. Now, I'm not, I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not as knowledgeable in football as I am in basketball. Definitely not. I consider myself an educated fan. I throw in my normal alchemy humor, and you get a long extended clip of each Niner game. It's perfect for those of you out of market or that don't want to invest in 4 hours of your Sunday. So if you're interested in that, check out the Patreon along with other exclusive content, almost coming at you daily, man. I'm pumping it out there. I appreciate y'all's support. And I'm excited, man. I'm excited for the draft, and I'm excited for next season because behind the scenes, quietly, I think we got a lot of positive things going with some of these young players, and not to mention the revenge tour from the core three. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.